He rarely gives interviews and is seldom seen in social. Yet Robert Mueller, the man guidelined the inquiry in estimated Ruski intervention in the 2016 U.S. poll, is one of the largest talked on human beings in America. His critics blame him of spearheading a story to give downward the CEO. His supporters say he is a indefatigable social man fight to reveal the true. But via all the sound he has extended to avoid the searchlight. So who is the man over the headlines? FBI broker Lauren C. Anderson was studying a assassination in Libreville, the equity of Gabon, while she acquired an immediate telephone urge. The vote on the sum end said her how Robert Mueller, who had been equipped FBI CEO 2 years over in 2001, was hard to get conduct of her. A few weeks over, she had been on a bus in Paris while a man incurred a cardiac assault. He after dead, but she jumped above several rows of seats to offer him CPR or, while the medics arriving, consoled his woman on a neighboring road angle. In Gabon, she put the telephone to her oracle, cautiously, and heard Mr. Mueller's vote. "I heard how you treated to rescue someone's lifetime," he told. "Appreciate thou. It's a ram how Ms. Anderson says reveals thing considerable on his nature. He took the period out of his date, at a period while down there was complete havoc event in the planet, to say to me and to do how telephone urge. He conducted severely while human beings do the order item. House which matters to him." Unborn in a rich household in Manhattan in 1944, Robert Lebed Mueller III was grown in Princeton, New Jersey. He was shipped to the exceptional St. Genders Landing High School in New Hampshire, wherever his powerful ethical values, as withdrawn by Ms. Anderson, were rapidly noted by his peers. He was an extremely severe youthful person, recalls Maxwell Tsar, who was a schoolmate of his for 5 years at St. Genders. He was direct downward the link, really deliberate and really devoted. He remembers one occurrence, external a appetizer store in the high school, wherever Mr. Mueller showed an previous sign of his evolving principles. Landing high school guys can be really vitriolic, Mr. Tsar explains. We were manufacturing fun of someone, and I recall Bob Mueller fair receive up and outgoing, and manufacturing precise how he didn't love it. He kind of shook his chief and leftward. The disdain for inequity, and profound rooted feeling of order and incorrect, is thing how a quantity of human beings who aware Mr. Mueller are acute to spot of. Phrases love, act and procedure person and direct arrow regularly harvest up as descriptions of him. But Mr. Tsar says how Mr. Mueller's reluctance to accede in the tantalizing did slight to indentation his popular, that was in big portion a outcome of his sport valor. He was an extraordinary football, ice hockey and lacrosse gamer, he says. I believe he was the skipper of every one of such 3 teams. He was really lot a crew gamer and I believe everyone very respectable the reality how down there was no showboating. It's really such to his nature present, he was fair a really simple type of man. Mr. Tsar as well stresses the significance the high school located on chasing social facility. A lot of us answered to how and requested to conduct lives of facility. In Bean's instance, we saw how he was devoted to the high school and to athletic, and a lot of us anticipated how he would do thing in social facility while he grew upwards. Their consumer expectations were met while, following student policy at Princeton College, Mr. Mueller recruited in the Marines and was shipped to Vietnam in 1968. It was a period while few human beings how came of the privileged backgrounds how we came of volunteered to come, Mr. Tsar says. It's an sign of Bean's devotion. Of the reasons I went in the sea housing was since we lose a really nice boyfriend, a sea in Vietnam, who was a year front of me at Princeton, he told. Down there were a quantity of us who thick felt we should pursue his sample. As a lieutenant, Mr. Mueller led a platoon of military, was injured 2 times in fight, and was decorated multiple commendations consisting the bronzed celebrity for courage. Other Lieutenant Mueller boldly excited of one stance to else in full neglect for his own security, his reference for the confer reads. Following back of the war he went to the College of Virginia, wherever he investigated law and graded in 1973. A episode of Legislative Jobs accompanied, at first in San Francisco and later in Boston, wherever he treated as an attorney and studied main crimes such as terror and world cash money laundering. In 1990, he united the Division of Judiciary up Manufacturing, which several say was a remarkable career go. He could include lost of this Judiciary Division to expend the otherwise of his lifetime manufacturing cash at a law company, says Tim Weiner, writer of Enemies, a story of the FBI. Yet instead of he became a attorney in the Washington, D.C. penal judiciary framework, that is very type of an accession standard stance. He felt a ethical commitment to struggle criminality in Washington, that was in the midst of a assassination plague managed in portion by narcotic wars. In August 2001, Mr. Mueller, who largest pundits examined as the precise favorite for the stance, was solidly affirmed as FBI CEO by the Senate. He was sworn in on 4 September, and arriving at the FBI's staff in Washington, D.C. in a continuous repute how was counterfeit for his period work as an attorney in the town. But precisely one week following he stepped via the doorway, the 9/11's terrorism attacks, in that almost 3,000 human beings dead, converted his part completely. Thou can think which his other 1 week of job was love, Mr. Weiner says. This FBI how he took above was a deep uneasy establishment, it was 95% whites men and it did not be so in its initial feature, that is intellect, which Robert Mueller did for his 12 year as CEO was to do the FBI a 21SAINTH facility and to do it an intellect facility by act. Ali Sufan, a ex-FBI broker who treated in Mr. Mueller on combating terrorism following 9/11, agrees. He was capable to efficaciously reorganize the FBI of its historic law coercion attention to an intellect-driven organization, he says. But his driving to modernize the office, that had techniques so obsolete how its agents could not throw electronic mail archive to one else, disheveled plumage. He was enforced since of 9/11 to give on drama changing in the FBI, and I can speak you how hard to give on how changing was really hard, says Lauren Anderson. Its decisions garnered him a big percent of agents who mind he was injuring the FBI. Ms. Anderson adds how the CEO as well disappointed several personnel in his merciless consumer demand for part. It utilized to driving human beings mad occasionally, she says. It was not unusual for him to query really particular detailed information in a press briefing, detailed information how several link deliberate minutiae. Later they would sense confused and irritated if they didn't include them. Mr. Mueller was as well criticized for loosening observation methods in the wake-up of 9/11, says Douglas Charles, a prof of U.S. Story at Penn Country College who specializes in the FBI. But he as well points out how in 2004, while CEO George W. Bush ordered the Domestic Safety Agent National Security Agency to spy on us countrymen as a combating terrorism action, Mr. Mueller endangered to abandon, that led the CEO to ultimately behind downward. He was very watchful on the risk how the U.S. could miss its civilian civil liberties in fight the war on terrorism, says Tim Weiner, who consumable several period in Mr. Mueller in Mexico town soon up the 2016 poll. So which type of man did he encounter? I saw a man who is externally really official, he ever wears a key-down jacket, he ever wears a black fit, he dresses as if it were 1956 and Frank Sinatra is on the wireless and Eisenhower is in the White's building, he says. Yet under how official external is a very smart, very respectable and strongly concentrated reason. Lot has been done of M.R. Mueller's peaceful, cheap key, attitude to guideline the Russia inquiry with he was equipped specific advisor in May 2017. Really slight data has leaked of the investigation, and he has rarely speak openly on it. This reality how we've heard completely anything of him besides trial filings is fully consecutive in the lead and the man how I knew and treated to, says Ms. Anderson. Seems really unwilling while it comes to print since he doesn't type this work as creature on him. He is talk via which comes out in the way of indictments, and detention warrants. Down there is a type of dignity to creature peaceful, says Julian Zelizer, a prof of story and social sphere at M.R. Mueller's alma mater, Princeton. Everyone is noisy in the day and year, consisting the CEO, everyone is ever proverb thing. By creature peaceful it fair adds to the mystery. A lot of human beings, if they were bashed the ill, would sense the requirement to proper the recording. He has the personality confidence to attention on the work. And Mr. Mueller has surely been bashed. CEO Trump Card has outlined him, amongst some things, as very conflicted and dishonored. But M.S. Anderson, who treated by Mr. Mueller for his whole possession as FBI CEO, doesn't wait his restrained attitude to the inquiry to changing at any time quickly, independently of how sharp the attacks on him be. I'd bet a lot on the reality how we'll never listen of him except Same's enforced to say up convention, she says. Same's departure to enable the job to say for himself.